Anxiety is a word that's gotten a lot of attention in recent years. The National Alliance on Mental Illness estimates that more than 40 million adults have an anxiety disorder. There are countless medications and therapy techniques focused on taking away as much of this feeling as possible, but that end goal may not be the best for our health. Despite how much we've villainized this emotion, Dr. Muriel Reese says that anxiety is a necessary part of living.
There's a very significant downside to getting rid of anxiety because it is designed to be adaptive in that it is a signal of threat. When earlier time periods, when it really was lions, tigers, and bears, anxiety served as a signal to say, I'm in danger and I need to do something to respond differently to it. We don't have those same dangers today. We're not fighting lions, tigers, and bears, but much of the time I would say those look like our livelihood, things that threaten the things that provide for us. So like our job, our sense of security or safety.
But if anxiety can be such a helpful tool for us, why are so many people trying to get rid of it? Well, Reese, who is a licensed clinical psychologist and regional director of operations at Family Care Center, says that it can be maladaptive. This means that these feelings aren't always an appropriate response to the situation we're in. They start to interfere with our lives, causing distress and avoidance. When this happens, we're not able to differentiate a real threat from a perceived one. People experience anxiety on a spectrum, with the lower levels feeling like nerves or having some trouble breathing normally. But Reese says that the more extreme cases can have people heading for their doctor's office.
A lot of times people actually, when they first have anxiety, they might end up in the ER when it's more extreme because they don't recognize what's going on. And so sometimes they think it's a cardiovascular issue, again, on the more extreme side. But anxiety can be small to major and impacts people differently as based on their level of familiarity with it.
So if anxiety can be both helpful and harmful, how do we know when we can trust it? Reese says the first step is figuring out what anxiety feels like to you, since it's different for everyone.
So sometimes it is more racing thoughts. It can be a cognitive experience. It can be feelings, like I feel sort of aroused, sort of in a negative way, sort of like I'm spinning, or it can be like, sweaty palms and things of that nature. And this is why it's so important to know yourself and know things that can be triggers for you. And using those, you're able to then evaluate, is this an actual threat, or am I maybe overreacting disproportionately to the threat that I'm navigating?
Part of this process is also realizing what you're not feeling. Anxiety has become such a buzzword that many people use it interchangeably with other emotions. However, to really get to the root of what you're experiencing, Reese says you need to be as specific as possible when naming how you're feeling in any given moment.
We often say name it to tame it. So being able to build a vocabulary, especially relative to emotions, is really important. Sometimes people just have even the word anxiety instead of being able to say like, I'm nervous, I'm scared, I'm fearful, or I'm worried. There's a myriad of different words that can be used to describe emotions and to be able to know what those triggers actually are. So sometimes we've had negative past experiences and our brain keeps those as it should to warn us of future dangers. But just because, for example, I was in a car accident doesn't mean every time I'm going to get in the car, there's going to be an accident. But I have to learn how to navigate that and understand what's going on with my body, why I'm being activated in that way, and then make decisions in response to that.
Travel as a whole is a big trigger for many people. Recently, there's been a spike in anxiety about plane crashes. And with all the media attention around these incidents, it seems like a reasonable fear. However, it's still considered safer to fly than drive in a car. The National Transportation Safety Board reports that there's been more than 200 plane accidents worldwide since the start of the new year. A number that may seem shocking out of context. In fact, we're on pace to have the lowest number of fatal plane crashes of the last several years. Reese says this type of knowledge can be really valuable when dealing with anxiety. Educating yourself about what worries you can give you a sense of control and confidence about the situation.
It could be helpful if somebody is really preoccupied with turbulence as the stressor. What's involved in that? Why does that happen? And sort of understanding some of those variables and going, what charge do I have over that? Another key component that tends to activate people is that sense of a loss of control, because most of us are not the ones flying the planes. So going, I'm at the mercy of whatever things are happening while I'm on the flight, and going, well, you have other choices. Like you get to choose what you take on the plane or not. You get to choose sort of where you sit, what you do, what you listen to. There's a lot of variables that you're actually in charge over that can help with that as well.
Education is just one of many tools to help combat those anxious feelings. Reese says a strategy she's found to be extremely helpful is called chunking. This is the process of breaking the experience of flying into different segments.
So there might be pre-flight, and then I would say in-flight, and then like takeoff and landings, because some of the things that activate people might be more specific to each of those different parts of the trip. Like some people, turbulence is really what gets them. And so they're more afraid of when that can happen. And so with that, there's practical strategies that you can do, such as learning breathing techniques so that you can calm down when you start to notice your anxiety going up.
Reese also offers some behavioral techniques that go hand in hand with education. For example, it may be calming to choose your seat on the plane based on what aviation specialists deem to be the safest in a crash or the least likely to experience turbulence. One of the simplest strategies, which may also be the most difficult to achieve, is to redirect your focus.
I like to say we feed what we focus on. So if I'm focusing on playing out all of the what if strategies or what if scenarios that could occur, that isn't going to help me feel any better. So I want to replace that with thinking about other things that do benefit me. So just like we change the channel on the TV, I can go, I am going to focus on other things. So it's sort of a form of distraction, but in an adaptive way.
Again, it's much easier said than done, but mastering this skill could make all the difference in your travels. There are also various medications that can help with these feelings, but depending on your level of anxiety, it may be unnecessary. Reese says that each person should take the time to evaluate the extent to which anxiety interferes with their life and use that to decide which treatment option is best for them.
So if, for example, somebody has to fly for work, that's something they're going to have to confront on a more routine basis. So if that's the case, have they tried to utilize strategies that some of which I've mentioned or other behavioral health professionals have mentioned, and those aren't effective? There's always the opportunity to reach out and work with a behavioral health provider in your local area, because really they're designed to be that support and liaison teacher, for lack of a better way to say it, so that they walk alongside you as you're sort of practicing, confronting some of these feared things and developing ways to change your internal narrative, the thoughts you're thinking, the behaviors you engage in, so that you can really reduce that overall reactivity for a long time to come.
You can find out more about Dr. Muriel Reese and all of our guests on our website, radiohealthjournal.org. For more behind the scenes, follow Radio Health Journal on Facebook, Instagram, and X. Our writer-producer is Kristen Farah. Our production manager is Jason Dickey. I'm Greg Johnson.